Hello, my name is Ken Small and I'm with SSA Architecture in Las Vegas, Nevada. If you enjoy this video or you find it valuable, please click below to like it and share it on Facebook or social media or whatever, and feel free to link to it from your site. So today we're going to talk about something that's commonly done by architects, but not only done by architects, and that is either zoning entitlements or design review. And the zoning entitlements and design review processes basically entail drawing a site plan sketch and taking it to the bureaucracy and getting them to agree that you can build a building that looks, we'll call it sort of like that, on the site. So here's a common project. This project has been developed for a while. It's a sketch of 2 buildings on 2 lots. This is we're talking here about the commercial projects only, and there are specific rules for how a lot will lay out. You have right setback, left setback, rear setback, front setback, certain amount of landscaping between the building and the street, different kinds of landscaping material that are required or forbidden, minimum number of parking places, and all that. So we do a preliminary sketch similar to the one you just saw, and we take it down to the planning and zoning people for, really it's just a due diligence process most of the time. There are some cases where we won't do that, but the majority of the cases we recommend that before somebody even puts any money down on the property, just to get a first blush comment back from them. And then we develop the sketch a little bit more, which is what you saw on the sketch I just held up. And from that we find out if what the client wants is within the rules. And so by that I mean building not over the height required, able to provide the number of parking spaces required, the use is within the zoning, the number of driveways and the placement of the driveways are within the criteria that they state in their rule books. Each jurisdiction in the Las Vegas area is a little bit different from the others in terms of their rules, and there are different places in town that have exceptions. So if you're downtown, there's some exceptions to the rules as far as parking and things like that, but generally you have a list of criteria that you have to comply with. So hopefully from that information we can just draw a combination of what the owner wants and what's in compliance with the rules and submit it and have relative assurance that it will be approved. By relative assurance I mean people can still object. And so if you're doing something that inherently requires some sort of a enhanced review process that's beyond a normal commercial building, say you're doing a liquor store, say you're building a small casino or even a big one, where there's some serious impact on the local neighborhood, even though that use might be something that's acceptable within the zoning category, and even though the layout you have is in compliance with the rules, it can still get changed in the approval process or actually declined. So what if you have just a normal project? It's not one of those more difficult ones, like I said, a bar, used car lot, something like that. You just want to do a small office building or a normal project, retail project. Can we have a situation where you won't be able to comply with the rules? Well, the first way that happens is economics, and so you maybe paid more for the land than what it was worth, and so you need to more intensely develop it to get the deal to pencil. That's a tough one. The bureaucracy won't consider your financial problems in what they're willing to support or allow, and a lot of times neither will the planning commission, city council, county commission, whoever it is that's reviewing the town board. And but there can be circumstances where legitimately out of your control you have a situation where you can't or don't want to comply with the rules. Say your lot is too narrow and you're on a corner and you have an existing driveway and your driveway is too close to the corner in the existing rules, but it was built for a house. Well, now technically you should rip out the driveway and move it further away from the corner, but your lot isn't that wide, so you can't get it far enough away. Well, then you have a situation where you're not in compliance with the rules. Another example would be if you have an existing building and you're building multiple buildings around it, and because of that existing building being too close to the property line, say it's within the current setback requirements, or it's you want to add a drive-through between the building and the property line, you're in a situation where you can't move the building, it's just not going to make any sense, and again you're submitting out of compliance with the rules. So let's just talk about the procedure for that for a minute. So when you're submitting that kind of project out of compliance with the rules, there's going to be some additional steps, obviously. And there's a couple different ways that this kind of project can be done. Now, most of the projects that are just according to the rules are submitted by architects or engineers who prepared a site plan and a rough building model and submitted either for design review or a zoning approval or something like that. But there are two other categories of people that do this. One category is planners, and planners are people who basically work with urban planning issues, and then the other one is lawyers. So if you have a super tough case, you want to put a liquor store too close to another liquor store, you want to do a bar or something like that, definitely recommend, if there's any sign of objection or opposition, going to attorneys for that. There are a couple of good firms that we've worked with that are specializing in that, and so they've been pretty helpful in succeeding. But just to talk about a standard real estate development for a small commercial building, that's what we're focusing in on here. Our firm does this type of work, and a lot of other firms do. So we take the sketch that we talked about a little while ago, and we do a hardline drawing with a lot of details in it. Maybe not everything, but enough details to where we can formally submit it. Some jurisdictions will reject a set of plans that are incomplete, and they ask for things like civil engineering. But if you realize you're submitting not in compliance with the rules and you want to get preliminary feedback, they have procedures for submitting a very well defined drawing. In other words, dimension scale drawing, not a sketch drawn on a computer or using hand drafting, although not too many people use hand drafting anymore, but you could, and showing all the proposed elements. Then commonly you would get, if not a rejection letter, at least a list of comments that was prepared by the planning department or public works or whoever the local jurisdiction has reviewing it, and then you would then decide whether you wanted to make those changes, give up on your project and not submit it at all, or to try to compromise with them. So a lot of times we'll end up modifying our drawing, going back down and meeting with them at least once, but often many times, and then trying to get either reduced objections or trade-offs. So in the example of the building being too close to the property line and not being able to move the building, say your drive-through that you're trying to build between the property line and the building just had to be there to get the building to function, then you were building within the area of landscaping, then you could offer to do more landscaping elsewhere as a compromise. And so those kind of things can be worked out, and if nothing else, you at least would go into the public hearing and review process without a really hard objection where the bureaucracy has just got its arms folded and goes, no, we're just not having this here. So we go through that review and commentary process and hopefully work out a few issues with them, and then we have to go back in and do what you might call the real submittal. They have preliminary processes, and they have so-called final processes. I'm calling them final processes. It's this process or the process. So depending on what you're trying to do, who you're working with and all that, you can submit for one of those in the round that I just spoke of. And but typically we've submitted the real submission even though knowing it was out of compliance with the rules, and then they came back with, we're objecting to this and here's a list of our reasons for objecting, and then we do a revision and we bring it back and say, what do you think now? And then they go, well, we still don't like this, but we're okay with that. And so we put ourselves in a better position to go into the actual process of submission. And then from there we go to typically the town board, and then back to the bureaucracy. Based on the town board's comments, we can revise again, and then from the bureaucracy's review to the planning commission, and then depending on whether you're in a city or the county, it would be the city council or the county commission that would have the final word on it. So in each step in the process, the bureaucracy gets another shot at your project, whether they want to more ardently object or whether they're going to relent, or whether there's been some compromise with the town board that they're on board with, or the planning commission, or what have you. And then as those steps in the process occur, you eventually get a comfort level with, yeah, it looks like we're going to succeed here. And so to kind of wrap your arms around the timeline of this process, typically in this region, southern Nevada, you're going to expect, we'll say Las Vegas area, narrowing it a bit more, you're going to expect that if you're not in compliance with the rules, 120 days is probably a minimum. If you're in compliance with the rules, 90 days from the real submission is typically a minimum. There is also the ability on the bureaucracy's end to waive the public hearing process and do over-the-counter, informal, different kinds of names are given for not full-blown review process, and we have seen that happen also, so it could be substantially less. But let us say it takes a little while to do the sketch, to show back to the owner, here's the sketch, is this what you want? Take that and turn it into a set of hardline drawings and submit, and we'll say, regardless of the architectural firm or engineers, you're probably going to take 6 to 8 weeks to make up your mind based on the feedback that you're getting. This isn't how long it takes us to draw it. It's how long the process of showing what you want to the bureaucracy, getting their comments, and then taking their comments back to you and getting you to make a decision, that process. So possibly 60 days there. And then after that, a minimum of another 30 days if it's the informal process. And then if it's the normal process, 90 days minimum. And that's if you're not in a holiday season, so not November, not December. And then if you're submitting out of compliance with the rules, 120 days plus, plus, plus. And some of these things take years. Sometimes a decision is made to withdraw and resubmit. They can ask you to hold public hearings with the neighborhood associations and things like that. So there's a lot of steps in the process. So how much does it cost? It's expensive. It's really expensive. And so submitting for the preliminary, we offer a free initial meeting, and we give you a fee quotation to prepare the original drawing that's for the due diligence process, and then Based on what the due diligence process results are, we can then give you a fixed price for the actual submission drawings. Now, if your actual submission drawings are within compliance with the rules, you should have a lump sum for doing those drawings and a budget of hours for going through the public hearings and all that, and pretty well be close when you get done to where those numbers are. But if you're submitting non-compliant with the rules, nobody is doing that on a lump sum basis. Nobody is giving you any idea of how long it will cost. And particularly if you use these law firms, they're looking for a $10,000 retainer. Typically, on the low end, it could be $50,000 easily, depending on what it is you're trying to do for their retainer. And then, like all attorneys in the world, it's a drawdown account. As the money gets spent, you're expected to replenish it. For architects, our hourly rates are substantially less than what the attorneys are, but it's still the same process, and I don't know of any architectural engineering firms who are going through the design review process for a lump sum out of compliance with the regulations, because there's no incentive on the part of the architects or engineers to insure you against whatever the bureaucracy may feel about your project, and also the neighborhood's objections. So it's an open-ended thing, and if you bought a piece of land for $500,000, then it's probably not prohibitively expensive to you. But if you're trying to shoestring something along, you bought a lot with a house on it, and you're trying to turn it into a commercial property, and you bought it when the economy was down for a couple $100,000, you're really going to have a problem paying as much as it costs to get through this process. It's going to be really, really costly to you. So that's a warning. We have done those kind of cases, and we're happy to do them, but we want everybody to know that's what they're in for going in. And right now, probably some architects aren't even interested in doing this kind of work because it is sort of a headache. But we're happy to do it. We enjoy it. A lot of times it results in a nice building when we're done, and a profitable building for the client. So looking at that as the end result, I think it's worth it for us as architects to get involved. If you have any more questions about this, you can post comments here, but I don't check them very often, so I would strongly suggest that you email me. My website is www.smallstudioassociates.com. My name is Ken Small, and I'm with SSA Architecture in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you very much. Please like and share this video, and subscribe and watch all our other videos. As of today, we have like 3 or 4 dozen videos, all on topics that you should be interested in if you're looking at this video with the possibility of actually doing it. So have a great day, and thanks for your time.